Welcome, everyone, to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Thank you so much for listening. We have an outstanding episode for you this week. We have the president of ESPN, Burke Magnus, on the show, and he breaks down all the aspects of that big, shocking deal between ESPN and Warner Brothers Discovery that will allow Inside the NBA to continue on ESPN. It'll be produced by TNT, will air on ESPN. So ESPN President Burke Magnus gives us all the details on that. And then we get into everything else related to ESPN. Pat McAfee, Stephen A. Smith, streaming issues, everything related to the network, where they're going for a lead NBA announcer to join Mike Breen and Doris Burke, the state of baseball on ESPN, a lot of topics covered with Burke Magnus. And then, of course, we have Train of Thoughts with my buddy Sal Licata following the interview with Burke Magnus. Before we get to it, just quickly, we've had a great run of guests here in recent weeks on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. So if you missed any of the episodes, would appreciate it if you dipped into the archives, download them, and give them a listen. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo from CBS were on the show last week. Christopher Mad Dog Russo 2 weeks ago. Joe Buck 3 weeks ago. NFL Today host James Brown 4 weeks ago. So if you missed any of those, give them a listen and subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, let's get to it. Big interview with ESPN President Burke Magnus, followed by Train of Thoughts with Sal Licata. All right here, right now, on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, joining me now, first time for me here on SI Media with Jimmy Traina, and I appreciate him coming on because this is as good a week as any to speak to the president of ESPN, Burke Magnus. Burke, thanks for doing this. How are you?
Doing well, Jimmy. Thank you.
Big week, obviously, huge news, and we'll get to it. Before we get to it, just for anyone listening who may not know exactly what you do at ESPN, because the title is president, so obviously Jimmy Pitaro is the chairman, and then we have you as the president. So if you want to just give us a very quick overall what you're responsible for, and then we can get right into the topics that we need to.
Yeah, sure. So formal title is President of Content, and which means in sort of shorthand, it's really a responsibility for the work and the people that are responsible for everything from producing our live games, our studio, Sports Center, our editorial and journalism, our talent office, everything on digital, meaning ESPN.com and the app, everything on our branded social platforms. And all of this is sort of inside and outside the U.S., so international as well. It's a big chunk of what we do. It's a lot of people. It's about 4,000 people all in. But it, as I like to say, it's the toy department of life. So it's a lot of fun. It's challenging at times, of course, but certainly a ton of fun.
I mean, it basically sounds like you do everything, but you have your hand in everything.
No.
Live games and studios for me and the people listening, that's everything. That's what we care about.
Yeah.
So if I've had any broadcaster complaints, I go to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Come you now that I'm I've made an appearance here, you have a direct line to me always.
All right. We'll save those for the end. No, I'm okay. All right. So let's talk about Inside the NBA, because first of all, I hated that it broke on a Saturday night. That was not pleasant for people who do what we do. Yeah. So you were not expecting that on Saturday night when it came out?
No, it was scheduled for when it went, which was Monday morning. Right. Always a white knuckle ride, obviously, when you decide to do something Monday instead of Friday. But it was fine. It was totally fine.
So who had the idea to, let me start with this. Did ESPN go to, I'm going to say TNT. I know it's Warner Brothers Discovery. Yeah. Yep. I'm not saying, I'm just going to say TNT for my own mental purposes. Did ESPN go to TNT to propose this? Did TNT propose this to ESPN? Tell me the first grain of how this blossomed into what it became. Yeah,
the first move outside of our internal conversations was Jimmy Pitaro picking up the phone and calling, his counterpart Luis Silberwasser at Turner, and we had had a blossoming relationship with them relative to conversations around the college football playoff sublicense that we did, and we obviously know them well as partners on the NBA for many years, on the NHL for the last several years, on MLB, etc. So there's obviously a great relationship there. But Jimmy, after we talked about it internally, Jimmy picked up the phone, called Luis, and the essence of it was, we both have something we can provide each other, and let's talk around it and see if there's common ground.
Can you share with us whose idea it was internally? Was that Jimmy too, or was that someone else?
Yeah, it probably won't stun you to know that it was a highly desirable outcome for us, and one that did not take a ton of, it was not a long circuitous route to coming to the notion that, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could add inside the NBA to our portfolio and to our coverage of the league. So, it was a combination of folks in a very collaborative. Jimmy's an extremely collaborative leader, and he includes a lot of voices around the table, and and this one included a variety of people, all who were invested in seeing our NBA coverage succeed, and it went from there.
If it did end up being the licensing deal, would it have just been impossible for ESPN to hire those four individuals, Ernie, Shaq, Kenny, and Charles? Just because, I know Ernie had said he wasn't going to leave Turner no matter what.
Yeah.
Charles said he was staying, which nobody really believed anyway. Shaq doesn't have a contract after next year. Would it have just been, from a contractual standpoint, impossible to just bring those four over to ESPN?
Yeah, I tend not to use the word impossible ever, but yes, extremely difficult. And you noted, right? Every individual person was in a slightly different circumstance on the talent side of things. And plus, like, with all due respect, like, and kudos to the team at TNT, it's also a lot of people behind the scenes who have created that show. It wasn't just like a plug and play with the talent. And so, the combination of talent being, in all different circumstances, plus, you couldn't just interject a bunch of new people on the production and content creation side of things. Yeah, I think it would have been next to impossible, if not impossible.
So ESPN will not have any editorial control over the show?
Well, yeah, what we're going to have is, a line of communication, obviously, like we do. A lot of parallels have been drawn to the Pat McAfee show, which is, I think, a great comparison. Obviously, there's an open line of communication there on a daily basis, and this would be the same thing. We don't get too caught up in editorial control as a phrase necessarily, but they're going to produce it, and by the way, that's exactly what we want.
Right.
I always somewhat chuckle. And I thought the McAfee experience would have gotten us by this, with fans. We would have had a little bit of benefit of the doubt that, of course, we're not going to change the show. Like, why would we take something that's so successful and so iconic, bring it over, and then be like, hey, we know better, we're going to change it. Right. Same thing with that.
Can I tell you what has been the number one reaction that I've seen and I've gotten from this news? You probably know.
Yeah. Yep.
Are they going to shoehorn Stephen A in?
Well, I think that the answer is that we have no plans to do that, and that's because, frankly, the construct of the deal, really doesn't. That's not how it was conceived. What it's conceived is that Turner, as they have always done with this show, with this cast, with the people involved behind the scenes, are going to continue to do what they've always done, and we're going to distribute it on the ESPN platform. And frankly, like, that's exactly what we want. We don't want to change it. We don't want to interject new talent into it. We don't want to, really do anything to it unless there's, just by way of example, like, of course, like, from time to time, there's a talent who, is sick or is scheduled to do something else or has a vacation or whatever, like, well, obviously there'll be some flexibility in that, but like at its essence, at its core, no, like we don't want to do that at all. We want this show as it has been always.
Give me now. So the way they've always done it over there with Inside the NBA TNT is it was always on Thursday nights. They're on Tuesdays until the NFL gets off Thursday nights, and then so they do Tuesdays till the NFL's done. Then it's a Thursday night once a week show, and then obviously they're on during the playoffs. TNT has a bunch of those games. Yeah. You guys have way more regular season. I guess it's down. It'll be down a little bit next year with Amazon and NBC coming in. Yeah. But do we know yet, if you can tell us, when we should expect to see Inside the NBA and ESPN, like what days, what nights, when it's starting?
Yep. So we don't have every last T crossed on this, but essentially work backwards from the finals, right? So they will do the NBA finals. They'll do a conference final, which is a part of our new rights agreement, spare the final year. They'll do pretty much the entire playoff run, and then they'll do primarily during the regular season, the Saturday night and or Sunday afternoon window on ABC. And then there's a mechanism for some select games on ESPN, like opening night, a tentpole regular season game that happens to fall in November or December, for example. Like if we had Boston Cleveland last night, that would have been a perfect way to activate for that game on ESPN. And then Christmas Day and that kind of thing. So, but heavily, post January 1st, when ABC's coverage kicks in, Saturday night prime, again, occasional or maybe all Sunday afternoons too, and then the playoffs and the finals.
Okay, so you would guess we'd see them opening night and then maybe only once or twice until after Christmas.
Yeah, a limited number of times. Yeah.
Gotcha. So does that mean for the weekday games you have the show you have currently with Malika and Stephen A. and I believe it's Kendrick Perkins and that, and now you have Shams instead of Woj. Does that stay?
Yeah, that stays. So two things, a lot of questions in this regard too. So I'm happy to clarify, but we really have two franchise studio shows for NBA. One is NBA Today, which is the Monday through Friday afternoon show that obviously continues as is. And then NBA Countdown will be the studio show around, around all the other windows, of which there are plenty to your point. Like we're going from 100 regular season games to about 80. And so there's less windows starting next year, but that's still a lot of windows and a ton of opportunities for that show to continue, and it will.
And I said it flippantly, and we can get to it deeper a little later, but I would assume you slide Shams in for Woj on that show.
Yeah. I mean, Shams, by the way, has been fantastic. Like, I mean, some of these things in our business are so unpredictable. I mean, who would have thought, Woj was going to go, make that life decision. And by the way, kudos to him for doing it. But we haven't really missed a beat at all, in my opinion. And Shams, who I didn't know at all, has been fantastic. Great guy, very collaborative, really hardworking. And I think you'll just continue to see more and more of him.
All right, we'll go in. I want to get into that a little bit. Let me just finish up here on TNT Inside the NBA. I think one of the things that sort of got underplayed when the news broke, and I feel like everything sort of got underplayed because, like I said, it happened on a Saturday night over the weekend. But one of the things I didn't see a ton about that I thought was huge is these guys who are an institution, who everybody loves, they never worked the NBA finals. Like, to me, that was the biggest part of this is we have never seen these guys during the NBA finals. And I think that's going to be a real treat for NBA fans.
Yeah. And I agree completely. And that's why it was such an important part of our renewal. And I think at one point, we referred to it as a must have, and it was, and it's just an enormous advantage to us in terms of conversations we have with talent. Like, whether it's game talent or studio talent or folks covering the game, like having access to the finals is a singular element. And I think that's going to be unbelievable.
How much of this, if any, listen, at the end of the day, ESPN is like any business in the world. They want to make money. That's what everything is about.
Yep.
And obviously, Inside the NBA is thought of as the greatest studio show of all time, along with probably College Game Day. So that's why you want it on your air. You have this chance. It's available. It shores up your network and everything. Is there any element of it, though, that is a PR move in terms of the reaction from fans when they thought this show was going to end was pretty overwhelming? Was there any element for ESPN like, this keeps fans happy, or, we look like heroes, or, we're saving this show? Was any of that in play?
Listen, we're fans too, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of that show. I do, by the way, put College Game Day and this show sort of in the pantheon above all.
And I would say the original NFL Today on CBS. I think those are the
three. I'll give you that.
I guess you have to do 4 as a Mount Rushmore, but I don't have a 4th right now.
We'll call it the modern era, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't want to see it end either as fans, and so I don't think it was overt like you're describing in terms of, but the opportunity to bolster our coverage and really preserve an iconic institution played a role for sure. But it played a role almost like selfishly for me. Like, I want to see it keep going too.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to figure something out.
It's a good sort of what's the expression? A good bullet in the holster. Like, if someone comes after ESPN, you can be like, "Hey, we saved Inside the NBA."
Yeah.
Get off our back.
Yeah.
And I want to reiterate this for people listening, because I know there's been so much about it. The 4 of them remain TNT people. So if you want, let's say you wanted to put Charles on First Take one day, just as a hypothetical, that's like a whole separate thing that has nothing to do with this. Like, you'd have to go through that the way you would have always gone through it pre this deal.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And I think Charles has made his point of view very well known.
Here on this podcast, by the way, he said they're going to put me on the Ocho and Charles. When I had Charles on,
I said to somebody else recently, like, the car wash is for people that want their cars washed, not for people who don't. So, he doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate you clearing a lot. That's really good information there too about your crew staying together for those weekday games, possibly, and when we're going to see Inside the NBA. Since we're on the NBA,
one last thing on that, if I can.
Go ahead.
I mean, I know the comparison has always been you're comparing it to an absolute iconic program with a great history, but Malika Andrews in particular as a host has her ceiling is as high as she wants it to be in this business, in my opinion. Like, I think the voices that we have, whether it's Stephen A., Richard Jefferson, Kendrick Perkins, Shanae, I think that show, as it currently exists, I understand the legacy and the history of years ago and the winding road we've been through over the years. But right now, I think we have a pretty good crew together, both on NBA Today and NBA Countdown. Mike Wilbon, too, I should mention.
Yes. A couple of things. I just going back to where we started. It was an ESPN idea. You go to TNT. How long did it take for this to? Was this pretty quick? Were they open to it right away? Was there a long negotiating period? Tell me about the deal.
It was really in their court for a while because of the lawsuit with the league, and that nothing could really happen until, and that's none that we weren't involved in any of that, and it's not really our it wasn't our concern at all. But they had to wind through that process so it didn't happen quickly, I wouldn't say, but that was a result of the legal resolution as opposed to anything else.
Yeah.
Conceptually, they were very much in favor of. They got a great piece of really valuable college football content, which is scarce to say the least. As well. So they're happy with it.
Yeah, they got a bunch of Big 12 games from you guys. Have you heard it all? Because we haven't heard anything at all, unless I missed it, which is always a possibility. But I don't think we've heard anything from Ernie, Shaq, Kenny, and Charles. Charles made a flippant comment Tuesday night about we got to start kissing ass again, which is perfect. Charles, do we know how are they thrilled with this? Are they happy? Have we gotten any? Have you heard any feedback internally from the four cast members?
Yeah, we've various people, Jimmy included, myself, Dave Roberts, other people internally, Mike McQuaid. We've heard from them. They're very happy about the show continuing. I don't want to represent each of them as an individual point of view, but they're happy about the show continuing. And as we noted earlier in the podcast, like each one of them has a different circumstance directly with their employment with Turner, and so they're working through a bunch of that. But stripping all of those complications away, like the idea that it would continue, it would be on ESPN and ABC, and they would call they would be at the NBA Finals. All of that, is seems very positive.
All right, let me tell you guys about Underdog. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Just call your shot by picking higher or lower on 2 or more player stats. Underdog is for everyone, so you can make a play with only $1 or go big and win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Do you think Patrick Mahomes will rack up higher than 300 yards next week? That Mahomes will get lower than 300 yards next week? Cook up some entries for Shot to Win, real cash prizes, all NFL season long. Underdog also offers you vulture protection. Yes, that's right. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and that running back gets vultured, Underdog will rescue your entry. Also, there's tons of promos Underdog is offering. Underdog is the best place to play pick'em, so sign up and deposit now using the code Sports Illustrated to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Underdog's offering profit boost, discounts, and free picks as well. What I love about Underdog is 2 things. Well, plenty of things, but the 2 best, easy to use, great interface, simple, and then I just love the action, higher or lower. You don't have to worry about digging deep into doing research for this, that. It's higher or lower on stats. Patrick Mahomes passing yards, Christian McCaffrey rushing yards, Justin Jefferson receiving yards. Higher or lower. That's it. Fun and simple. And then, of course, great bonuses from Underdog. Download the app today and use the code Sports Illustrated to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the app today. Use the code Sports Illustrated to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama, Nebraska, and Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, you can call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right. Well, since we're on this topic, let me switch gears, keeping the same sport.
Yeah.
You guys have Mike Breen and Doris Burke currently as your lead NBA team, which is important because that's who's calling the finals, who will call the finals. You're sort of mixing in people for that third role, Richard Jefferson and Jay Billis and a couple of others, I think Tim Legler. Yeah. Is there a point in the season where you need to have that third person solidified? Is there a front runner? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I think the answer is no to both of those things. When we sat down, and listen, we were left in a very difficult spot here, particularly with Doc Rivers' departure back to coaching. But when we really sat down, and by the way, JJ got us through last year, I thought, really successfully, and he always was upfront with us in terms of his intentions to want to sort of scratch the itch of coaching, and who wouldn't take the opportunity that he got with LeBron and the Lakers. So no issue there whatsoever. But, when we really sat down and thought about it, and with this year being unique in that it's the final year of what I'll call the old deal, right? Knowing that and wanting to see exactly how Turner's situation with the league resolved itself, and what availability might be created as a result of that long term. We just decided, hey, listen, we've got a bunch of talented people like Jay and Richard and Tim and others, that we should give an opportunity to see what chemistry is there. And I think maybe a little bit more than it should. I think it's overblown a little bit. Part of this is because we had Jeff and Mark and Mike, as the A team, if you will, for 17 straight years. So yeah, like that was sort of, people understood that. But in a world where that didn't exist, like, we, really what we're trying to solve for here is what you mentioned, which is who's going to call the finals, right? Who's going to call who's going to call the conference finals and the finals? And, we have this whole entire regular season in front of us to give people opportunity to see what kind of chemistry develops and make that decision when we're ready. And then looking ahead to next year, who knows, right? I mean, right. We now kind of know who's going to be in and who's going to be out from a broadcast partner's perspective, and there may be other people who either call games now, or every year there's another crop of players that retire.
Sure. LeBron could retire, and there you go.
Yeah. So who knows? We'll put him on the Brady watch or whatever. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to do that. But like that was the thinking, was we don't have to rush into anything here.
Okay. Well, let me ask you. So sports fans generally, we love nostalgia, especially with announcers. We saw it with Vince Scully in his later years. We saw it with Vern Lundquist when he left CBS. We've seen it with Bill Raftery. People thrilled he's getting the tournament here in New York. John Sterling came back. Everyone loved that. No thought to giving Hubie Brown at 90 years old one last go around for the finals?
No, and by the way, we are going to give Hubie one last shot on a game. He deserves that. We think the world of him. I think it's absolutely remarkable the level he still calls games at age 90 plus, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that wasn't a thought vis-a-vis the finals, but I don't mean to be purposely mysterious here, but we're gonna honor Hubie this year during the regular season at some point to be determined, and send him off, in style and with proper. I mean, talk about. I don't think there's a single human being who's ever had a longer association with professional basketball.
Right. Right. So this is Hubie's last year? Is that an official?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take off my sports media reporter cap and ask you a question as a fan.
Sure.
Why does it have to be a 3-person booth?
It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. We're not locked into that. I think we had a magical situation for a lot of years with Breen, Van Gundy, and Jackson, and people got comfortable with that. But we don't look at it that way, Jimmy, at all. I mean, certainly we're not ruling it in or ruling it out.
Yeah. Okay. Because I that's always a pet peeve of mine. And in baseball, I think it's fine because there's so much downtime, although not necessarily now with the pitch clock. All right. So I would imagine things in Bristol, this has to be, I would assume, a high water mark from the standpoint of, in the places you may have had a couple of issues, the Monday night booth, obviously now you have Joe and Troy. That can take you forever, basically, you don't have to touch that for a long time as long as you've re-signed them. Now you've got your NBA studio show taking care of it inside the NBA. You've got McAfee during the day. You've got Get Up going strong. I guess you have this, we'll get into it, Stephen A. We got to figure out what's going on there. But obviously First Takes ratings are strong. I would assume, I mean, do you have many avenues you need to improve, or are you pretty like, this is pretty good right now, we don't have a ton to do?
Yeah. Listen, I think when you start stacking up the people we've added of late, inside the NBA, McAfee, Nick Saban on College Game Day, Belichick on the Manning cast, the Mannings themselves, if you want to go back a couple years, Jason Kelsey on Monday Night Countdown, Shams to replace Woj. Like, yeah, we feel really good with the personalities and the star power we've added to try and get better. By the way, I think Monday Night Countdown is really pretty good right now, with Van Pelt at the helm, and Kelsey in the mix. So yeah, we've already talked about the NBA booth, from a games perspective, which is a work in progress that we're trying to solve. And I love college football with Fowler and Herb Street game day. By the way, we're 2 weeks away. Think about this in a world of declining distribution and so forth, from cord cutting and everything that people wring their hands over.
Mm-hmm.
We're 2 weeks away from the most viewed college season of College Game Day ever. And that's remarkable. And that show is like hitting on every conceivable cylinder with Pat McAfee and Nick Saban added to the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's interesting about, we could get into this. I don't know if this was on my list of topics, but you just made me think of it. I remember, and this is not to toot my own horn, although I'm going to toot my own horn. I remember when you guys lost the Big Ten, it was this whole big thing, at least on social media. And I was like, who cares if they lost the Big Ten? They're getting the SEC, which is the best package in college football. Like, it was the reaction to you guys losing the Big Ten made no sense to me, because I knew CBS is in that last year with the SEC, and then it was going to you guys.
Yeah.
I don't like your score bug for the SEC. Can I complain to you about that?
Yeah.
The 1st and 10 needs to be bigger. It's way too small for old people who can't see like me. It's different than all your other. Make that bigger, and we have no problem. But anyway, the point is, you guys got the SEC. Like, I felt like that sort of went under the radar. What did you think about that?
Yeah, well, it did for a couple reasons. One, that deal happened like 3 years ago.
Right.
And we're just now, starting to live it. And last year was, if you recall, like, we had to do 1 year where we had no Big Ten, but the SEC deal hadn't kicked in yet.
Right.
So I think it kind of lulled people into not, and so like what's happening this year is what the landscape's going to look like for the next decade. And I'm with you entirely. Like we've done triple headers on ABC more often than not, where it's just SEC to SEC to SEC.
Right.
Lead-ins help raise the level going into the games. I saw a stat yesterday that we put out on social, but I want to emphasize it here. So the noon window, the 3:30 window, and the primetime window in college football, SEC on ABC has won that window 75% of the time across all networks.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, those are the teams that people want to watch: Alabama and Tennessee, and I don't have to go through it. And again, the Big Ten really just has Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, this year Indiana is obviously a great story, but Northwestern's not moving the needle.
State and Wisconsin, I would add, and Iowa from time to time. But I guess I would say, and I don't criticize. I think the approach they took was an interesting one, but they made a lot of noise about like the multiple network philosophy, right? Sort of the NFL model, if you will, right?
Right.
Which is one way to do it, but we saw it as the opposite, which was concentrate the best college football content on one network. Notwithstanding the fact there's ESPN games, there's SEC network games, etc. But I think what they're experiencing now is, the inventory thins out pretty quick. And to have to feed A level games to 3 different broadcast networks every week is a challenge. And and it also forces viewers to change networks. And in a world where a lot of people are getting their channels through YouTube TV or Hulu or other things, or streaming, where channel surfing, if you will, is not what it used to be. Having everything stacked up, we've gotten unbelievable results so far.
Yeah. I would so I so for college game day, say adding Saban, was that a no-brainer for you guys? Did you consider having him do games? Was it only going to be college game day? What was your mindset with Saban?
No, it was only going to be college game day, not because of us necessarily, because that's really what he wanted to do. And we had enough experience with him, enough opportunities over the years where he would join, the set, if Alabama happened to be out of it that particular year, or they had lost in the playoff or whatever, which wasn't that often, but we had done enough with him on the set to know that he was going to be really good. And, then we did, his first show ever for us was the NFL draft in Detroit. And it was like fireworks going off. Yeah. Like, this guy had just walked off the sideline. He knew every single player in the draft. He had immaculate preparation. He knew he did a PhD level sort of X's and O breakdown, but he could also talk about kids as people and players as people. He's really pretty special, and he's learning how to shift his life away from a completely different level of everything. But I think the combination of Pat and Nick, and that really special kind of odd couple relationship that they seem to have forged pretty quickly is really special. Pat's not the new guy anymore, and Pat's energy and enthusiasm really, I think, helps Nick be more comfortable, understanding that it's an ensemble by design, so it's really pretty special. And you add it to Dez and Reese and Kirk and Corso, and it's like I said, the reason it's being watched so heavily this year, and will probably likely break the record, is because it's really good.
Yeah. Well, and I think, having that SEC in the early window helps. And then obviously, I think Pat, I want to get into Pat. Before I get into Pat, one thing on game day, since we're talking about it, and I mentioned earlier that sports fans love the nostalgia play. Where do we stand with Corso? Because I don't even want to go into any sort of area of, maybe it's time for him not to, he should do it as long as he wants to do it. Yeah. There are people who think sometimes he gets a little uncomfortable, and I hate that for him, and I hate that for the show. Where are we with Corso? I mean, you think this is it? You think there could be another year?
Listen, I think we're going to do what we've done now for a couple of years running, which is we're going to have a conversation with him after the season and see where things are. He's a special guy. I mean, he's one of the nicest men any of your listeners or anybody on earth could ever come across. And he's been absolutely iconic on the show. So we're going to get through the playoff this year, let everybody decompress, and then we have some time to figure out what we're going to do for next season.
Fair enough. On Pat, so it's interesting. I guess it was late summer. ESPN had a conference sort of in Bristol. I was there, and it had gotten a little contentious at one point with Pat and the media. Pat is not shy about telling everyone how he feels. I do feel like since then, over maybe, with the start of this football season, let's say from that point on, things have been relatively calm, stable, controversy free with Pat.
Yeah.
Obviously there were things in the past. It was a whole bunch of things. Pat thought maybe ESPN people were against him, and fans were reacting because maybe someone was saying the word shit during the day on ESPN, like that was going to cause a big hullabaloo. But things have sort of stabilized, I think.
Yeah.
How do you see that? Do you think we've hit a smooth patch here now with Pat? Things are good?
Yeah, I think things are great with Pat, honestly. Like, I wouldn't argue with that your characterization at all. There's two key elements to our relationship, which is, his show, during, Monday through Friday, and then his presence on game day. And, we're getting everything we possibly could have hoped for and more on his show. The guy books A-list guests. Every commissioner wants to be on the show. Every athlete wants to be on the show. It's a stamp of approval relative to, the industry right now to be on his show. He resonates with young sports fans like nobody's business. I know my kids are 25 and 23, and he's the man, no doubt. And he delivers day in and day out, on his show. And then on game day, it's hard to describe, honestly, like how he's developed and how he's operating at such a high level right now on game day. The energy and enthusiasm he brings every week. The field goal kicking thing is entirely his idea, entirely, that's not, that's his money. Like, I mean, sometimes it's matched for, hurricane relief and other things, but
Right.
like the fact that he created this franchise that, that is really kind of simple in its notion and execution, but so important to people now, not dissimilar to the headgear at the end with Corso for so many years, is remarkable. Like,
Yeah.
and that's all him. It's like, he connects with the culture at each of the schools. He learns the songs, he knows the chants, he connects with the kids. Like, it's been pretty special to watch. And so, he's hitting on all cylinders as far as I'm concerned. We're really, really happy with the relationship. And, I wish the industry would, by the way, it was kind of funny to me that like, with a couple exceptions, the whole industry sort of just took, 60 million viewers on Netflix for,
Oh,
for
we'll
the
get to
fight the
that.
other
We will
night,
get to that. Believe
as
me,
if,
we will
like,
get to
it
that.
was just, oh, of course yeah, of course.
Right.
But nobody's willing to really accept the fact that millions of people watch, that show on YouTube every day. So,
Well, that's where I was. Well, the first thing I was going to say is,
yeah.
is ESPN going to cover any of the 800,000 Pat laid out of his own pocket last week? I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like you guys should maybe help fray some of the costs there. That was a big nut for Pat.
Yeah,
800,000.
I think I can't remember what last week was, whether there was a match or anything like that. But no, listen, part of the reason it's
Eight.
so special,
Yeah,
he
he gave away 400,000 to the
to the two kids.
charity, and then it
Yeah.
was the two Henry.
Yeah.
I think the guy's name was. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, no doubter, that kid, like after weeks of kids shanking
Yeah.
it, that kid just drilled it down the middle.
That was a good moment. So how would you say? Because I know early on there was some hullabaloo about Pat's ratings on linear TV, which
Yeah.
I've said that is not how you should be judging the Pat McAfee show. What is ESPN's stance on how the McAfee show should be judged in terms of success?
It's well, certainly there's a linear component to it, but I'm what you just said is exactly the way we look at it, and not just for his show, but for the business right now. Like, we live in a multi-platform world where there's verifiable audience, on linear, on digital, on streaming, on social, and in order to, for both purposes of reach and relevance, you kind of have to be in all places. That's why you see ESPN leaning into our branded social platforms so heavily, is because, and again, I know this a little bit because of my own experience with my own kids who are avid sports fans in their early 20s. Like, that's how you reach people, and that's how you get them invested in your brand, and that's the way you sustain a business long time. By the way, social is like a very significant revenue driver for us. And so to just dismiss, the fact that it's also on YouTube, or it's also on ESPN Plus, or it's also here or there, like, is a pretty naive way to look at the business right now, and is not at all in tune with how the industry runs. So, we're happy to do it. We have to trade in that in that information ourselves. You get all the press releases, so it's still a thing that that is relevant, and is in many ways sort of a referendum for if you're succeeding or not. But we're not only, we're not dismissive of it, we actually are leaning into it, as much as possible. And as we enter a world where we're going to be selling, ESPN and making it accessible to people direct to consumer through our flagship initiative, like that's the world we live in, plain and simple.
Now, I mentioned you guys have had a lot of wins lately. What you have also going on currently, I guess, are some negotiations with Stephen A. Smith. I guess his contract is up relatively soon.
Yep.
He's on First Take 5 days a week. I guess he's still going to be doing NBA. We've learned on this podcast on those nights when they don't air inside the NBA. He's made rumblings about wanting to do things outside of sports. You think you get Stephen A. back in the fold? Is it strictly a sort of Juan Soto, he'll go to the highest bidder type of thing? Where do we stand with ESPN and Stephen A. Smith?
Well, first, let me say I hope the highest bidder is the Yankees for Juan Soto. If
I don't know, wouldn't you rather? Like, I'd rather get 3 players for that price than 1. I know I'm probably the only Yankee fan who thinks
easy for me, easy for us. I mean, it's not it's not our money, but it kind of is because I'm sure they'll raise the price of beers and that kind of thing.
Right.
But no, I think he's a perfect fit. His personality, the whole thing. It's hard to find the player who's like that good that can also hack it, being on the Yankees.
That's true.
That's true. And endear himself with the fans and that kind of thing. But anyway, we digress. What were we talking about? Stephen A. Yes.
Stephen A.
So absolutely, we're making progress there. There's nothing I can tell you with any specificity. I feel like we're making progress. It's, when you're talking about a person of his magnitude and his talent, it's very complicated, both in terms of what he's looking to get out of it and what we're looking to get out of it. But I have the highest degree of respect for Stephen A. I've said it many times, but I'll say it again. Like, he really is the hardest working guy I know in terms of, and so willing to do, everything we ask, and so relatable across a variety of different, potential shows and categories that, we don't. I personally and ESPN, like, I just can't imagine a world where he's not at ESPN. Or, at least with us, to some degree, and doing other things. He's made it pretty clear that he wants to do things outside of sports, and he's begun to do that. And I think he can be really, really successful there as well. But I hope his primary role continues to be at ESPN. And I, I feel like we're making progress.
Are we in a time now where ESPN's biggest competitor for a talent, let's say Stephen A., in the past, it used to be, okay, you guys are competing in terms of getting talent with Fox or CBS or NBC. But now everything is so fractured where a Stephen A. could conceivably leave ESPN, sign a deal with Spotify and, MSNBC, and then do TV for this, FanDuel, whoever. I mean, it's so split. Does that make it harder or easier for you guys to keep or land the talent?
I think it makes it harder, but not impossible. And because I don't honestly think that, there's not a whole lot of people that are at the level that Stephen A. is at relative to being able to do all of those things, right? I think he can do all those things, and I think he'll be really successful. Like, whether, I could see him hosting a game show, he could host Family Feud. He could be on Fox News. He could be host of First Take. He could be developing film and television projects.
General Hospital.
Yeah. Lest we forget his recurring role. Yes. But yeah, like it makes it harder, but for the truly special, and he's truly special, like, you figure it out. I think the world of, I think the emergence of podcasting has also made it more complicated, but it's also created this, this reservoir of talent that you may not have discovered otherwise, except for they just went out and did it on their own, and long ago that Pat was one of those guys, and continues to be one of those guys. But like he may not have had a career in the old world, in a purely linear world, because he might have been too unorthodox, or been too, maybe never given a chance, So we love the fact that all of these, that the content is so vast and so widespread now, just from identifying talent. But it does make it more complicated, for sure.
I want to ask you just some totally random questions, like almost like a rapid fire thing, just to get you out of here in a reasonable amount of time. And
Sure.
some of these will be weird, some of these won't be weird, but just things that have come to mind. This one's a little more complicated than straightforward. Where are we at with baseball in terms I know there was a story that I think it just came out yesterday about in 2028, MLB wants to have a national package for the local teams and get rid of the blackout. You guys have sort of gotten out of you haven't gotten out of it. You have Sunday nights and then you come in for the wild card. I'm just going to ask you to speak for ESPN. Like, is baseball still something ESPN wants, or if you guys didn't have baseball, you wouldn't care because the narrative is that it's only old people who watch baseball. Where do we stand with Major League Baseball and ESPN right now in terms of a partnership type of deal? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, baseball is definitely something we still want. I think it could take a variety of forms going forward without question. I think Commissioner Manfred and his team have done, an excellent job to this point, which I think it will continue to evolve significantly over the next couple of years. With that 2028 announcement, I think he's signaling this is where we think it's going. And I would agree with him relative to, I don't think the RSN, saga is over, not by a long shot. So, there's tons of opportunity relative to baseball content and games and a relationship with MLB at ESPN. I would just sort of point to the rule changes as a fan, like that to me proves that MLB has their eye on the ball relative to how the fandom is evolving and what fans want out of their MLB experience, and I think they'll continue to do that, and I think that just creates opportunity. But in a world where streaming is a major part of everybody's business, and they have the game inventory they have, which is vast, I think there's many different ways you could cut that pie for us and others, in the media space.
I wish you guys would be more involved in baseball. I feel like you guys would be good for the sport. I mean, baseball on Roku, it's an embarrassment for the sport. Like, they should be more in bed with ESPN. That's just me as a baseball fan speaking.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of the great baseball fans of all time. Jimmy is a really passionate, Yankee fan, like 162 game type Yankee fan.
Yeah. That people listening to this are going to be like, that's why the Yankees are on Sunday night so much. I don't want to, and then that'll cause a whole firestorm. Speaking of which, in terms of Sunday ESPN programming, for Monday Night Football, I don't mean you specifically, ESPN, maybe it's you. What kind of say do you have in maybe getting a game flex, or is that 100% NFL?
Yeah, and that conversation is handled by the programming team. Okay. There's a mechanism for us to and the conversation with the league is constant throughout the season. So it's not like, we have to type up a memo and say, hey, would you consider flexing this game or not? Everybody's sort of aware of what's happening with teams and records and injuries and circumstances and so forth. But it's for the NFL to either do or not do completely at their discretion.
So if this whole Simpsons thing wasn't going on, would ESPN say to the NFL, hey, I think it's week 15, 14, Cowboys, Bengals, can we get rid of this? Or the NFL has to sort of initiate it?
The NFL doesn't have to initiate it, but they have to, it's their decision, right? Entirely.
Okay. Right.
Listen, I mean, we just did 17 plus million.
I know. It's a whole big thing here because I had Joe Buck on the podcast, and I said, Joe, I know that the NFL has to spin it as the Cowboys are relevant. They're not relevant because it's not about relevancy. They're awful to watch. That's the disconnect, I think, between maybe the broadcasters in the league and the fans. They're awful to watch. And Joe said they're always going to generate ratings no matter what. And Joe made sure to text me yesterday to tell me the rating of the Cowboys Texans game. Yeah. So what are you going to?
I only brought it up for the reason that I just I'm not disagreeing with you, but I can't imagine a scenario by which we flex out of a Cowboy game.
Got it. I don't think you can answer this honestly, but I'm going to take a shot.
Okay.
Was there any part of you, even just maybe 1% of Burke Magnus on Friday night, who got a chuckle and was a little bit happy that Netflix had all those streaming issues for that, whatever the Mike Tyson exhibition nonsense spectacle was? Because I do feel like, in this world where everything's going to streaming, if I'm ESPN, I'd be like, see, good luck with that.
Listen, I happen to know how hard that is. And so for that reason, well, for a lot of reasons, I would never wish, calamity on a competitor. But honestly, like my only thought was it's a lot harder than people realize. It really is. I mean, we do 30,000 plus live events a year, of various shapes and sizes in terms of their scale and audience, etc. And we've been streaming content for decades at this point through the ESPN app and other places, ESPN Plus. It's just way harder than it looks. And not to mention, and so is producing a high quality telecast. I think we all kind of get, a lot of fans sort of just take it for granted. Take a typical NFL Sunday, for example, how good that is. And so, yeah, no, I didn't, I was more upset about what happened in the ring than
Right.
The telecast.
And you're not buying the 65 million people watch this fight announcement.
Listen, I guess that could be accurate. There's auto starts and all kinds of other stuff. There's stuff outside the US. My only point on that was how quickly I thought everybody sort of accepted that as fact.
Right.
When we're fighting our own battles with, the Pat McAfee Show on YouTube, which is completely verifiable, Anyway.
Yeah.
I just thought that was amusing.
Yeah. I will say this. I thought of this while you were, we were talking about Netflix and streaming issues. I usually tweet this once every college football season. And I mean this sincerely, because I am a degenerate gambler. On Saturdays, I am streaming the ESPN app on usually 2 or 3 separate devices, watching the most random college football games there is. And I always say I've never had a problem. Like, I'm blown away by, now listen, you're not, the audience for a Tulane Old Dominion game is not going to be 60 million people, obviously, but right. You guys do have, from what I've experienced. Now, I don't watch UFC. I don't know about any of that, but I'm just talking Saturday afternoons, college football from noon to about midnight. The experience for me has always been top notch. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that's my point, is that at scale, it's really hard to do. And usually if something happens, it's almost entirely something at site, right? Because things happen at site. Power goes out, or a truck, loses some capability. But in terms of bringing it into Bristol and distributing it out, you're right. It's pretty remarkable. And we got a lot of people and a lot of money put against making sure that fans get that experience.
When I mentioned Netflix, you said you wouldn't wish a calamity on a competitor. And you also talked about, in the beginning of the pod, making the deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. And you said, Jimmy picks up the phone, he calls his counterpart. Is it, in my head, I would think you guys have pretty stiff competition with, whether it's Turner, CBS, Fox, NBC. Is it not like that? Or do you have better relationships with some than others? Could he call Fox and do what he did with WBD?
This is a really small industry, and people tend to know each other, and we are behind the scenes, frankly. And I've learned this in my current role, on the crewing and operations and trucks and and encryption and transmission, all that stuff. You'd be surprised at how often there's cooperation and collaboration among competitors because of, just trying to get stuff done with, and we might have to move into the CFP might happen in an NFL stadium where Fox or CBS is doing a game literally like the day before. And if they don't help us, it may not get done. It may not get done. So there's a lot of, it's a very, in my opinion, very healthy competition. among all of us. And I don't know that anybody thinks, truly like directly competitive like that anymore. Like I, for one, think, when people, because I get the question all the time, like, who's your biggest competitor? And they're asking for one of those names. And I never give them one because I believe this, like our competitor is people's time. Like anything else that could take
Sure.
your time, that would sacrifice your ability to be engaged with ESPN. That's what we're competing for, because especially younger fans, have a wealth of in a fragmented world have a wealth of choices, video gaming and the like. So yeah, I don't think of it that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. To me, ESPN is still ESPN. I don't care what anyone says about streaming and this and younger people. I mean, when it comes to sports, I feel like you guys still run everything. So that's just how I feel. Last two things, and these are just for me personally. I feel bad for people listening because they might not care. Is there any way to get the U.S. Open men's final away from the NFL? Can you talk to the U.S. Open and switch that scheduling? It was at 2:00 on the first day of the NFL season this year.
What do you mean by away? Like off Sunday entirely?
Yes. Is there a way to do that?
Where would you?
Because if the NFL's on, I'm not watching the U.S. Open. No offense to ESPN.
No, I get it. Where would you put it though?
Anywhere where there's not an NFL game. Sunday, Monday. I think the men's final at 4:00 leading into Monday Night Football would be tremendous. But when I said that on Twitter, I had all these people tell me about Europe and England and time zones, and I only care about me in New York. I'm sorry, like I'm not interested in. But think about a men's final going into Joe and Troy on Monday Night Football. The promotion you guys would do for it would be tremendous.
I don't think you're going to be happy with my answer on this one, which is I doubt it. Like there's so many other considerations, and that, by the way, it's not our decision at all.
Right.
But no, I don't think so.
Okay. And the last thing is, Bad Beats is the single greatest segment on sports television. You guys need to promote it more. That's it. That's all I have.
All right. Well,
it is the highlight of my week when it comes to sports content.
Excellent. Well, I mean, Van Pelt will be listening to this, and undoubtedly he'll text us both saying thank you. But I agree.
So Scott, I know Scott re-signed. I guess he's going to do less Sports Center in the coming years. Is that the deal with his? Like he's still going to do it, but maybe a little fewer dates. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the particulars there, but obviously we put him on Monday Night Countdown, which is a big new assignment for him, and and he does 200 something Sports Centers a year, so yeah, I can't remember the particulars, but he works a lot, and I'm happy to have him on that NFL show. I think between him taking over Monday Night Countdown and Greeny on Sunday, I feel really good about where those shows are.
I feel like SVP flies under the radar a little. He doesn't get the Stephen A. McAfee attention, but he deserves it. Does a really good job.
I agree. My hypothesis on that is at the end of the day, even though he's carved out a tremendous brand for himself, I think a lot of people think of it as an episode of Sports Center, and so it gets, the shadow is cast over it by of Sports Center, which is such an enormous sub brand. But I think of it the way you think of it, which is he's got his own, he's got his own logo, he's got his own show. It's different than every other episode of Sports Center, and that's because of him.
This just reminded me of one thing I should have asked you when we were talking about Stephen A. He has been very vocal about wanting to do a late night show. Could you, and I guess now there were reports of Jason Kelsey maybe doing would that be an ESPN or an ABC situation, or would they be allowed to do it at and Jason Kelsey both, since they have both been rumored to be part of getting a late night show?
Yeah. I think when listen, I can't speak for Stephen A., but I think he thinks of it as, could he host one of the conventional, like the legacy late night shows? And again, I wouldn't put anything past the guy myself personally. I think he could do anything he sets his mind to doing. Kelsey's a little bit different. There are some that's really like kind of a football show late at night, potentially. So
got it.
But we're still working through that.
So is the slot after SVP, is that something you guys are looking at to maybe fill with something like a Jason Kelsey show, something similar to that? Or
I don't think we're not really looking to fill it. I think there's an opportunity there on a limited basis to do something different. We have tremendous success. We've had tremendous success in just going Sports Center to Sports Center late night, and I think that's really the recipe for success there. But it doesn't mean we can't try other things from time to time. But it's not it's not on the board as a problem that needs fixing.
Got it. I have one more personal thing. Can we get the NFL primetime with Boomer and Booger? Can we put that on linear ESPN just on Sunday night only from 7 to 8, and then you could go on ESPN Plus? Because for the NFL fan, that 4:25 game ends. You have that small window before NBC that you're trying to get dinner, get organized for the next day. I just want to put on ESPN and see Chris Berman.
We gotta have a joint podcast with Brian Rolap and Hans Schroeder and myself and others. We could talk that through in real time. I'd be happy.
Just give me one airing on linear. Just one airing on linear. That's all I ask for.
We're aligned on a lot of things. I got to tell you.
Okay, good. I appreciate it. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and giving me so much time. And this was great. And we'll have to do it again down the road. Thanks a lot, Burke. Really appreciate it.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks, man. Take care.
Thank you. All right, joining me now, as he does every week, for our Train of Thought segment from SNY TV, WFAN Radio, my buddy Sal Licata. Sal, how are we doing this week before Thanksgiving?
I cannot believe Thanksgiving is next week. I know we say the same thing every year, how it creeps up on us, but it just, as you get older, it flies by even faster. Hard to believe that we're, week 12 now in the NFL? Thanksgiving next week.
Yeah, I find Thanksgiving's a little depressing in that, I feel like that's when the start of the NFL season, the end of the NFL season starts happening.
Starting to wrap up.
Yeah, that's what I don't like.
February's right around the corner.
Yeah. The dark doldrums of February. Yeah. On top of which, that's my birthday month. It's just horrible all around.
Yeah.
All right. So last week, I have Jim Nantz and Tony Romo on the podcast. At the very, very, very end of the interview, I'm trying to wrap it up. And after we spent all this time talking about Bills Chiefs, Sal and I both bet the Bills on Sunday. So
yes,
send it in. Tony goes, who do you think's going to win? So I go, I think the Bills are going to win. He goes, no. I'm talking about Tyson and Jake Paul. Now, just to refresh everyone's memory, shall we play the audio of that exchange?
For you guys, who wins, Mike Tyson or Jake Paul?
No.
I think the Bill. Tony, I think the Bills win. I think the Bills win. Yeah.
No, I said Mike Tyson or Jake Paul.
Oh, Mike, you couldn't pay me to watch that fight. Okay, so here I am thinking this is like some big exhibition bullshit nonsense spectacle that no one's going to watch, and it turns out every single person in the world watched it, and I know you watched it.
I did.
And it blew my mind that anyone would even pay attention to. Blew my mind away. I mean, I don't know what I was missing, but obviously I ended up being right. That's why I played the clip, because everyone said the fight sucked. So, and then the streaming issues, which we'll get into. But I just wanted on the record that I was correct.
It was still, I don't want to say that fight was entertaining, but at least for a night, I had something that I looked forward to and enjoyed the escape of watching that, as bad as it may have been.
You're the only person I've heard say this.
Yeah, but it was, everybody else watched it. Why'd they watch it? They didn't watch it because they really thought a real fight was going to happen. They watched it because they wanted to be entertained.
But how is a 60-year-old person fighting a person on YouTube entertaining?
It wasn't, but the whole night was. The fight before it was good. The interview where, they ended up showing Tyson's ass was funny. The broadcast was so bad. It was entertaining in a bad way.
What time did the Tyson fight actually start?
I want to say 11:30-ish.
Oh, that's not that bad.
And that's my guess. It might have been a little after that, but it was around that, I would say.
Well, maybe I should have watched the fight, because I bet the under in the Washington UCLA game. So that's what I was watching, and then basically lost the under on that. I had 14 points to play with, and Washington at 2 minutes left, instead of taking knees when they could have, scored, and then UCLA went down the field and scored. So when that was over, I put on Bill Maher, and I fell asleep watching Bill Maher at like 10:20. The fight was not even in my brain. And if Tony hadn't mentioned it to me, I would have never even thought about it. And then, of course, the next morning on Saturday, I wake up and I check Twitter, and every tweet is about how bad this fight was and the streaming issues of Netflix, which obviously, you don't have games you could just like blow off Christmas Day. These are not shitty games. Christmas Day is Chiefs, Steelers, and Ravens, Texans. Netflix.
There are only 2 games Christmas Day?
Yeah.
And
1
what
and
time
4.
are we looking at?
1 and 4 or 4:30. 1 and 4, 1 and 4:30.
Christmas Day, 1 and 4:30. Why can't it be 4:30 and 8?
I don't know. I don't make the schedule.
But like it's a weeknight. Doesn't make any sense why they would do that at 1 o'clock against the NBA. Not that, again, I'm locked in.
My guess is maybe because they already are screwing these teams badly by making them play on a Wednesday. So now, if
Wednesday, Sunday though, they're I don't know that.
Oh, right. Because it's the well. I don't know. I can't answer that question for you.
Yeah, I would just. You're the TV media guy.
It's 1 and 4:30. That's all I know.
And that's on Christmas Day. Nothing Christmas Eve, or do we have anything Christmas Eve?
No, but all of these teams play the following week. So maybe that's why they didn't want to have a night game.
What do you mean they play the following week? They play Sunday?
Yes.
They play Wednesday the 25th, and then Sunday the
5th. Oh, I see. Right. Oh, okay. It's not Sunday the 29th.
No. Right.
Okay.
All right, but wait. Yeah. So, are there any games on Christmas Eve or no?
No.
And then there's one Black Friday.
Right.
Okay. And the Black Friday.
Black Friday is November. That's Thanksgiving.
That's afternoon.
Yeah, it's Raiders Chiefs at 3:00.
And I know these are 2 different conversations. One's about the streaming that we're going to get into, sure. Right. But I just wanted to know the lineup. That I'd rather game at 4 and nighttime on Christmas Day. I feel like that would fit most people's schedule, but whatever.
Right. Oh, there's a game on Thursday night if you're interested. Seahawks Bears. How bad were the streaming issues? Because I didn't see it.
I think it depends on the person. So for me, I didn't have any streaming issues during the great fight, the women's fight that was before Tyson Paul. But I was reading about it on social media that streaming issues. I was like, wow, I guess I got lucky. I didn't have any streaming issues. And then the main fight started, and there was some buffering. It was mild, but enough to annoy you. And the point is that it should never be happening. It's unacceptable. It just can't happen. They have to figure it out. There is no excuse for that damn buffering thing. And imagine this happening during a football game or football plays or any kind of issues where you have to get out of the app, go back into the app, rewind, pause, play. They got to figure it out.
Well, there's 2 things here. I wouldn't expect issues for the football games because the football games are not going to have 60 million people. But I will say this, and I wrote a whole column about this on Monday. Let's say there's buffering during both games on Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do about it? Nothing. All you can do is send out some tweets or Blue Skies or whatever people are on these days. Like you have no recourse. You're not going to cancel Netflix. You're not going to get a refund. Like there's nothing you can do. We're at their mercy. It's not like cable where if you get fed up with your cable system, you go get a different cable system or you go to satellite. If Netflix fucks you, there's just nothing you can do.
Right, but you also don't have to watch. Like there will be people and honestly, like I could be one of them because if it were that bad, I would have said, screw this, I'm not watching anymore and just go watch something else. Like there will be people that either are annoyed to begin with or do get into it and take the time to go watch it. And then it's buffering, and then that's it. Like if it happens with Sunday Ticket for me, which it has happened because it's a streaming service, sometimes I'm like, F it, I'm not going to do the 4 screens. I'll just go with the 1. Like I can't take it anymore. So I don't know how that impacts them negatively, but if enough people say, screw this, I don't want the issues, then they could be in trouble.
Well, how? They're not going to cancel Netflix.
Oh, why not? What if people were fed up with I've had this
because Because no one is subscribing to Netflix for the NFL. They're subscribing to Netflix for the shows and the movies and the stand-up and for the entertainment stuff. They're not subscribing to Netflix for NFL. And everyone has Netflix already. They have 280 million subscribers. So they have 285 million subscribers. You know how many people would have to cancel Netflix for them to take a hit on this? So we're at their mercy. They can have buffering all day on the 25th. There's nothing we can do.
But if people don't watch the NFL, wouldn't that do something for their relationship with the NFL?
Well, the NFL, if as long as Netflix pays the NFL $100 million or whatever it is, the NFL doesn't care if there's buffering.
Right, but then I guess the way that it would happen is if the fans get so annoyed that they're like, all right, that's great that the games are on Netflix. I'm not watching those games.
Yeah, but that's not realistic. No one's going to skip the Chiefs and the Steelers on Christmas Day, especially if you bet it.
Yeah, but you're speaking from your point of view. The majority, there are a lot of people who don't bet or don't give a flying F about the Chiefs.
I understand.
Steelers.
But what I'm saying is there's no NFL fan that's going to blow off Chiefs Steelers with home field on the line on Christmas Day if there's buffering. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're that into it anyway, but Christmas Day, people got to, like, they're lucky if people watch, period, on Christmas Day. And then if they have issues, it will annoy people. What are they going to do ultimately? I don't know, but they better get it figured out.
Well, no offense, but you're wrong there because the times they've played on Christmas Day, the ratings have been through the roof. There was that one. Remember, it was Cleveland, Green Bay on Christmas Day. Yeah, Browns Packers. That game had 29 million viewers on Christmas Day.
What day of the week was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't care what the majority of people do. I'm sorry to say this, and I work in sports and I love football. I love Christmas and my family more than I do the NFL. So they could be pigs about it all they want and make as much money as they can. I don't give a shit. If I got something to do at 1 o'clock on Christmas, I'm not going to be slave to the NFL schedule. That goes for Black Friday. It goes for Thanksgiving. It goes for Christmas. It goes for Sundays. Like, at some point, you have to have some self-respect and do things other than just be slave to the NFL schedule. I'm not doing it. I'll do it when it's convenient for me. And it might be convenient Christmas Day. It might not. I don't know. But I can't. And I guarantee you that at some point, because I talk to a lot of people that we work in sports, it's too much. Monday, Thursday, Thanksgiving, like it's too much. Eventually the bubble will burst. Eventually.
I don't think the day of the week matters here because everyone's off. So that doesn't matter. I want to be on record as saying I have zero self-respect, and I do love the NFL more than my family. So I'm locked in on Christmas Day at 1 o'clock no matter what. Those are just facts. And I'll say this. You can say that and have that little rant, but then when they get 35 million people watching it, well, actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know. All right, so just thinking it out loud, if the Browns and the Packers got 29 million, you would think Chiefs Steelers would get like 35 million. But it's on Netflix. It's not on CBS or Fox, so I don't know how to gauge it. And I don't believe that 60 million people watch the Tyson fight, but who knows?
Well, how do they even judge those?
Well, Netflix. It's not Nielsen. It's Netflix that's giving you that. That's why I would take it with a grain of salt.
Right. It can't even be. It's not like it's downloaded, right? It would have to be. Maybe there's a way they could judge it. Who the hell knows? I don't know.
Well, they know what people are watching, I think. I mean, because, when you go on Netflix, it says, oh, you watch this. Oh, because you watch this. Oh, this is where you are. And,
Okay.
So.
And by the way, is that a good percentage? You said how many subscribers does Netflix have?
258 million, I think it was.
Right. So 60 million of those.
That's a good percentage.
And NFL would hope to get 30, you're saying?
I would hope they would get 30. They should get more because they're not limited to just the United States audience.
I would bet under that myself. But I don't know. You're more equipped to that.
I'd bet way over because you have a global audience as opposed to just a United States audience. So, this freaking streaming. It's so Sunday. I'm watching the Steelers. Sunday was phenomenal, by the way. Steelers, Ravens, Chiefs, Bills, and then you had the Bengals and the Chargers. And I'm watching the Steelers and the Ravens on YouTube on Sunday Ticket, and the game just disappeared. Just disappeared. You couldn't even find it. It wasn't even offered for about 5 or 10 minutes. I saw some people on Twitter saying, because I checked Twitter, I'm like, is this just me or is this, and I saw someone from Pro Football Talk, Michael David Smith, Maggie Gray, they were tweeting. So these streaming services, these goddamn streaming services.
Did you have the 4-box up?
Yeah.
And then what happened? Did they replace it or was it?
No, it like went to like the home screen. And then when you went to the home screen, the Steelers and Ravens were not even an option. So
it hasn't been as clean as maybe we would have hoped in year one for YouTube.
Well, it's year 2. I disagree. This was their only glitch.
This year 2 with YouTube?
Yeah. Last year was year 1.
Oh.
Sunday ticket. This was the only glitch this year. Remember last year I went to your house? There was the only Sunday it didn't work.
Yeah, but I didn't. Oh, I forgot that was YouTube. I was thinking that was DirecTV,
Yeah.
the streaming thing. Still,
They had one day last season where they had glitches, and it was the day I went to your house. And then this year, this was the first glitch of the whole season.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, man, if I had people over, they'd be yelling and screaming at me, but wouldn't have been my fault.
So you didn't lose the Steelers Ravens game?
No, I was not. I did not pick that up, and I was working till 3.
Oh, that's right.
So then after 3, after I signed off, I just went down. I worked from home. I went downstairs, put it on. I had no issues. I saw the Steelers and Ravens.
Got it. Streaming. All right. Inside the NBA gets saved in a very unique situation. Now, I'll give people full disclosure. Sal and I are taping this on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I'm taping an interview with ESPN President Burke Magnus, which a lot of you just heard. I know some of you go right to the Sal segment. So I would have covered that already, but I haven't had that interview yet with Sal. So my 2 cents on this is one of the rare things that's a win for everybody. The show lives on. ESPN actually gets a good studio show for a change for the NBA. The fans get that show to continue. Like, I don't see any downside here at all. It's actually excellent news.
So what happened? I saw the headline, but I still am not sure. Like, it was a trade?
No. So inside the NBA is still a TNT property. And the show is still going to be produced by TNT. Everything's going to be the same. The only difference is, so it's licensed to ESPN, meaning the only difference is instead of it airing on TNT, it's going to air on ESPN. ESPN has, now again, this is before I taped the interview with ESPN President Burke Magnus. ESPN has no say in the show. It's a TNT show.
So ESPN is paying them to air their production of the TNT inside the NBA.
Right.
And then my question is, what happens to Malika Andrews and the current studio shows?
Yeah, that's the stuff that I'm going to cover tomorrow, even though people are listening to this after both interviews were taped. Yeah, that's when you do this in segments, that's what happens. But yes, that is one of my top questions.
But they have to be out, no?
Well, I mean, they have an NBA studio show during the day that I'm sure they'll still be a part of. I'm sure they're going to continue the NBA today, but in terms of pre and post, that's going to be Ernie, Shaq, Kenny, and Charles. Shaq is not under contract for next season, but I'm sure they'll work that out.
And that's through TNT is going to have to work that out.
Right. But Shaq can have a deal where so you can have a scenario where Shaq signs with TNT, does inside the NBA, and then signs a deal with Amazon or NBC and works a Saturday or a Sunday, for them. Like, that could conceivably happen. I'm not saying it will, but
right. TNT, we know definitively is out of carrying basketball games. So instead of them, It's going to be NBC and Amazon
and ESPN.
And they don't have their own studio show. Amazon, NBC.
They're building them. Okay. They have a year. So
okay.
Yeah.
This is the last year of TNT, but we're still all getting that show next year on ESPN. Okay.
Right. So like the announcers, like Ian is supposedly going to Amazon. He's a TNT guy. I don't know what's going to happen with Kevin Harlan. I assume NBC or Amazon is going to hire Kevin Harlan. Who else do they have? Then the analyst Reggie Miller and
Brian Anderson.
Brian Anderson, Stan Van Gundy. And Brian Anderson does baseball for TBS, so who knows what happens there.
Mm.
All right. I just want to say briefly. So last week on the pod, I said to Sal, I'm losing Twitter followers like crazy. I didn't know what was going on. We had taped that on, when did we tape last week's pod? I don't even remember.
I think
we taped it on Wednesday. Yeah. We did it on Wednesday. And then I started hearing from people who heard the pod that a lot of people have been leaving Twitter. Now I'm losing something like 100 followers a day. So if that many people are leaving Twitter, I find that fascinating. And everyone's going to Blue Sky. So I'm not doing that. I created a Blue Sky account over the weekend only for the sole purpose of having my name, because if everyone's going there, I don't want someone to take my name. Well, Sal, Blue Sky could be good for you because you hate Twitter, and Blue Sky is supposedly a nice version of Twitter.
I don't know what Blue Sky is. Does it have anything?
It's the same thing as Twitter.
So does it have anything to do with political, Blue Sky?
No.
Red, okay. So then why are people, it seems like people are signing off because of the political stuff, no?
No, yes, but the app has nothing to do with politics.
But then why wouldn't Blue Sky just be the same thing as Twitter, just a different version of it?
That's what it is.
Then why would I want that? It's the same thing.
Because here's why. Because I think there's 18 million people on Blue Sky. And I think there's 300 million people on Twitter. So there's way less assholes on Blue Sky. So if you tweet something, you're not going to get attacked, and you're not going to get everyone responding that they think you're this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah. No,
at least there are people who left because, listen, I think most people left because of Elon Musk owning Twitter, and they don't want to support him.
Okay.
Other people have left because whatever you tweet, you get it's just nasty vitriol, and people are just complete animals on there. So that's the other reason. Supposedly Blue Sky is more on top of getting rid of the hate speech and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So from what I saw, I spent maybe 5 minutes on it, just looking at it. It's the same exact thing as Twitter in terms of, interface and usage, not the experience.
Yeah, yet. And then what's going to happen is everybody will jump ship to Blue Sky, and then...
Well, that's what I was thinking, but I guess the difference is they're going to have stricter policies about hate speech and attacking people and all this. The one thing I don't know, I need to find out, is if they have the blue checks on Blue Sky. If they don't have the blue checks, it's useless. Because for me, this is just my experience. Twitter was shitty for a long time, but what completely ruined it to me was when he let people buy the blue checks.
Agreed.
Once that happened, then it's just a free for all, and you don't know. Someone breaks news. Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, and you got to spend 10 minutes to make sure it's the real thing, because everyone can just.
At least there was some legitimacy before that, where generally, if somebody had a blue check mark, you knew it was somewhat legit.
Right.
Now you have no idea who's what. So,
what's your Twitter name? Is it Sal Licata? Is it Sal _ Licata?
At Sal _ Licata.
Right. So someone could conceivably go on Twitter, pay them the fee, and get the username Sal _ Licata and put 2 A's at the end.
Yeah.
And then they'll have a blue check mark, and they can, that the blue check mark thing for me that's when everything changed for the worse over there.
I agree with that. It took away credibility.
Yeah. Shelby says he doesn't think there's blue check marks at Blue Sky. So to me, again, I need the blue checks. I want to know someone's verified, so I don't have to worry about, falling for bad tweets. A la Aaron Rodgers last week.
Also, it used to help in that regard. If you saw somebody respond to a tweet of yours or whatever, or follow you with a blue check mark, maybe oh, who's that now? It's just anybody.
Right. It's a complete free for all. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's part of why people are going to Blue Sky. Like, it's not one reason why. Everyone had their own reasons for going, I guess. But the election and Elon Musk is what
I think it's
caused.
political.
Yeah. Do you know who the president is right now? Are we on top of things these days?
Actually, I was not. Is the acting, like, is Biden still the president technically?
Yes.
I didn't even know that.
20-something. Yeah.
I did not know that. I guess I didn't really think of it. I really never gave it much thought, other than that it was going to be one or the other, Harris or Trump. I didn't really give any thought to who the current president is. I forgot about Joe.
Okay. Well, that's bad. Next week, I guess, we'll read the reviews for November. And when I glanced at them, I know there was one question. We might as well answer it now. Maybe not. Maybe less people will be listening next week because it's Thanksgiving. Who knows?
Yeah.
But there was something in there. We can read it next week. But I know someone said something like, they want to know how you know so little about this stuff. And they weren't saying it in a negative or derogatory. Like, they wanted tips. They wanted advice on how they can be so politics free. So do you have any tips for the people?
Yes, I don't watch it. So I don't watch the news. I don't watch Fox or NBC or CNBC, whatever channel. They couldn't even tell you what channels they're on. So that's number one. So then how else do you consume your news and info? Okay, well, if I do read a paper, I start with the back and then I stop at the middle. Like, once I get beyond the sports section, I may maybe check out page 6, but outside of the post, outside of that, that's that. And then on social media, you see certain things, but I do my best to either mute certain words, whether it's whatever.
Oh, I know what word you have muted.
Well, there's multiple, but yes, whatever you don't want to see, mute those words, and that should clean up your feed, even if you do follow some news networks to where you won't get certain hot button things. So that's it. I mean, I just keep my head in the sand about it. Like, I pay attention to what's going on in the world to a certain extent, to the rate that I have to survive, but I don't want to get aggravated. I already get aggravated enough with life and with sports. I don't need the political aggravation as well.
You know what the comment I'm going to get the most now, Well, for this is, people are going to be like, I can't believe Sal still reads the newspaper.
Well, I mean, I haven't in a while, but I missed it. I used to like reading the Post. I'll read it online.
It's so funny you say that, because where was I? I was somewhere Sunday morning, and I saw all the papers, and I said to myself, man, I used to love reading the Sunday paper, and I haven't done it probably in like 6 or 7 years.
Why? No need or cost, or where you at?
No need. Sadly. Although I did notice, I texted Sal over the weekend, the New York Post now, they put all their people behind a paywall. I wanted to read Phil Mushnick's miserable column.
Yeah.
And it was behind a paywall.
By the way, on that topic, because I never really thought of this either, didn't they screw up by initially just giving away everything for free?
Well, every site was free, and then every site had paywalls, basically.
No, but I'm saying, like, to get the paper when we were growing up, you didn't get it for free. You paid for it. Right. So we would pay for the paper. Then the internet happens. Then they give you it for free. Then it makes me say, well, now that I got to pay, I'm not paying for it. I just had this for free. But in reality, we used to pay for the papers.
Well, most sites wouldn't have the exact paper online. I know they do that now, but you have to pay for it. It would really be, a compilation was what the website used to be. It wasn't the actual paper. Now they have it, where you can, like, I know for Newsday, that's what I subscribe to I use my parents from Long Island. Yeah. You can read the paper online, the actual paper, but they have other stories that aren't from the paper.
Right. My point is that the model, whoever thought it was a good idea to give the content away for free when the internet first hit, that's where the error was. Because if you just charged then, we would have all become accustomed to having, all right, well, I want this, I got to pay for it. But we got everything for free, and now it's like, I'm not paying for it, and I'm not signing up for the subscription, and remembering my password, and this and that. Like, it's just too many steps.
Yeah, like streaming.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another thing. I don't want to do any of it anymore.
Yeah. All right.
It's amazing how we're in 2024, and we could go, whatever to space, but we can't figure out what we used to do in the 50s and 60s, plug a cable into the TV box and just get it working. Like, why can't streaming do that? It seems odd to me.
Listen, we'll be long gone before they figure that out. So I won't worry about it. All right, Sal. Have a good week. We'll see you next week for a big Thanksgiving train of thoughts.
Looking forward to it. Talk to you later.
All right. Take it easy. All right. My many, many thanks to Burke Magnus and Sal Licata. If you missed any recent episodes of SI Media with Jimmy Traina, make sure you go into the archives and check them out. Jim Nance and Tony Romo were the guests on the show last week. Christopher Mad Dog Russo from SiriusXM was on the show 2 weeks ago. Joe Buck 3 weeks ago. James Brown, the host of CBS's NFL Today 4 weeks ago. So give those a listen and subscribe to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, we'll see you next week. We'll have a show. Usually pod comes out on Thursdays. Obviously, next Thursday is Thanksgiving, so expect the pod on Wednesday next week, Wednesday morning, for your Thanksgiving commute wherever you're going. All right, we'll see you next week. Stay safe and take care.